One of the factors that my experience and what kind of convinced me working with my dairy nutritionist, he kept commenting on the forage quality, that phosphorus number. He's like, you guys must put a lot of phosphorus on your land. And I was like, no, dairyman, is there phosphorus? But yeah, we don't add any extra phosphorus, never have since Dad maybe did in the early 90s, but probably since 1995, I don't think we've ever put any extra phosphorus on besides the grower's product.
Yeah, my name is Jim Hallbeisen, and this is my opinion.
Okay, my guest today is Eddie Jantzi. We're going to go north of the border. For you guys that everybody's used to heading south, we're going to head north. And we're a little outside of Toronto, pretty close to Kitchener is where Eddie farms. He's a dairyman up there, been on his farm many times. Worked with his dad a little bit, but his dad said, nah, you got to work with my kid. He's going to be running the show here and see what kind of progress we can make. So today I think one of the big issues that I would like Eddie to talk a little bit about is forage quality with dairy cows and how that works. I know we've got a little disagreement about how to price dairy products, but we won't get into that. We'll just basically stick to the agronomics of it. So Eddie, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you just talk about your operation and what's going on up there.
Yeah, so we milk about 65 cows here in southern Ontario. And we've been with the growers program since the early 90s. Dad started, as Jim said. I kind of came and grew up with it. I think I was a young teenager when I first heard Jim speak and talk about this program. And from a dairy perspective, yeah, Jim's talked about forage quality. I think that's a paramount thing that is a benefit to the growers program, especially from a dairy perspective. You know, everybody wants to talk yield, especially in corn and soybeans, and I mean hay too. But at the end of the day, for us dairy guys, you can have all kinds of feed in that bump, but if the cow doesn't milk on it, it's really not worth a lot. And to me, what good is a triple the amount of yield when the cow milks 30% less or even less than that? So forage quality is a big factor. It's kind of why I got convinced on this program, was my experience seeing how forage quality does really affect milk production. And not only in volume, but also in components. So, you know, balancing that ration for milk, fat, and protein, it really does matter on your forage. I keep telling my dairy nutritionists, you know, the reason your job's easy is because we got forage quality. And he's, at the end of the day, is forage quality makes dairy nutrition look pretty good. So one of the factors that my experience and what kind of convinced me working with my dairy nutritionist was he kept commenting on the phosphorus number on that dairy forage, on the forage quality, that phosphorus number. He's like, you guys must put a lot of phosphorus on your land. And I was like, no, dairyman, is there phosphorus? And he's like, well, what about your soil test? I'm like, yeah, we do some soil testing, and it's, you know, average, it's within reason with everybody else, but yeah, we don't add any extra phosphorus, never have since, I don't know, Dad maybe did in the early 90s, but probably since 1995, I don't think we've ever put any extra phosphorus on besides the grower's product. And you know, when you look at the grower's product itself, it doesn't seem like a lot of phosphorus going on, yet the dairy nutritionists kept saying, well, your phosphorus number is above average on the forage quality. So that kind of convinced me back in the early 2000s that there must be something with this low amount of dinky phosphorus coming from growers, and it's still showing up in my forage test. Yeah. And any dairy guy knows phosphorus is one of your most expensive minerals in the mineral bag. So right. If you can cut your phosphorus back on your forage because your forage has it in, that's a big savings. And that to me is one of the biggest differences with our program.
Sure. Well, one of the things I want you to comment a little bit on, Eddie, is the total program. You know, how you've gone. You and I have talked a little bit about, you know, eggshells and that type of thing. Just talk about what you guys have done, with the quality, with the calcium side of the program, and how you implement that, and how important that you think that may be.
Yeah, so we have we do put some eggshells on. I got a source locally for a local source for fairly reasonable, and but we've been putting lime on since the early '90s, and probably approximately averaging 15 to 20 ton per acre on our home farm since the early '90s. Now we're more on a maintenance thing, and yeah, like these eggshells that you brought up there, Jim. We got a source here locally, and it's kind of comes and goes. The main product that eggshells are being used for is feed product, actually for the local feed mills. But there's times when it's whatever the machinery changes or whatever. Also, they got this eggshells they got to get rid of, that it just isn't feasible to take to the feed mill at the time. So they're looking for a spot to dump it. So I got talking to you about, well, what's the calcium value on these eggshells? And you kind of give me some suggestions on it, and we've been being, otherwise taking it to the landfill site and paying big dollars to get rid of it, and having an opportunity to bring it here to the farm and benefiting here has been a win-win for both of us. So
Sure. So the lime that you've been applying over the years, or since the '90s, that's from a quarry, is what you've been using?
yeah, it's mostly from a quarry. I think one time we got a sugar beet source one year. The price of trucking, and I think that product was a good product, but the price of trucking it didn't compete.
Sure.
So we've been, most of our lime's coming from a local quarry, which, it's, the price has gone up since we started. If we do it over again, we would have applied our 10 ton to the acre right away in the first early '90s, and because the price of that has gone up a lot. And
oh yeah. So with the eggshells, how are you approaching that? You're spreading that with a manure spreader, and then you're working those in, I assume. Do you have enough experience to have any opinion on the best way to handle them?
Not sure I have enough experience. Right now, we've done both manure spreader and lime spreader, because I do have my own lime spreader. So it spreads well. Like putting in it spreads almost as good as granular fertilizer as far as like going through the spreader. Even if it sits, we have some sitting right now. I just spread some last week that was sitting all for 6 months, and it spread. I had no issue spreading it. So actually, it does spread well, and even if it sits for 6 months on a pile, it still spreads okay. So that's the positive part. I still think if you have the opportunity, mixing it with manure is still one of the best ways, because it's such a hard shell. Like it's such the calcium, it's a hard shell, and I think the manure will break it down. So.
Yeah, our other guys that have worked with them said that the more you can beat them up, they just think that gets them worked into the ground more quickly. They dissolve better because, again, being shell like that, they can be hard to work with. So, again, that's something that our experience has been, that guys work with eggshells. And the other issue that some of the guys have had problems with have been with the odor of them. We had some guys up in New York that had a tremendous amount of odor with it, that some of the neighbors were getting a little riled up about it. And have you had any issues with that at all?
Yeah, that's a great point. Actually, leaving it sit for 4 months on a pile, actually, I think that eliminated that. But yeah, when it got hauled, we spread it within the first 3 weeks. Yeah, exactly. That is a problem. So I'm suggesting, guys, stockpile it for a few months. I actually think it heats a bit, and maybe that even softens the core, the crust, or like the shell. So I'm actually more confident to say I'm going to let it sit for 6 months or more. Maybe even, I think it could sit for a year if it had to. But yeah, it seemed now, like this spring, I spread that they've been dumped last August, September, and we can't smell them. So leave them sit for 6 months, and it seems to go away. The only thing is if it's in your backyard, keep it from a regular. Well, we get the westerly winds here, so try to keep it away. Otherwise, you got complaints from the house. So yeah,
I get
that is a factor for sure.
Sure. So the other thing I need you to chat a little bit about is how you use the product, and what kind of crops are you raising? Is everything for feed? Do you sell anything off of the farm? And then on the different crops that you're raising, what's your approach with the Growers Mineral Solutions?
Yeah, so we probably grow 60% for feed now. 60 to 70% of it is our own feed. We do so. We have a 4-crop rotation. One of the complicated parts the last 2 years, we got a bunch of extra land rented available, and so we're trying to build that farm up. So so it kind of switched around a bit, the rotation, just to kind of get the hay on that ground and all that. And but yeah, we're corn, soybeans, and hay and wheat. And obviously hay and corn is a little bit higher ratio of the rotation. But yeah, we're using on the growers on everything. We use it both as a starter and as a foliar. So in corn, we've been playing with the 2x2 as within furrow on some of our acres. Mm-hmm. And I've been pretty happy. I'm trying to really focus on the silage corn to do that.
Sure.
We work with 2 different corn planters because we don't have our own at this point. So I have one of our neighbors. He willingly put a 2x2 on. And so I try to use that planter for the silage corn. And then if we don't have things with the amount of time we're trying to get our corn in, I get the other guy to kind of cover the grain acres. And that's just in furrow then. And on the 2x2, we're going last year. Then last year was our second year. We're going into our third year. So last year we kind of did that. Well, it was 11 gallons total volume, but about 7 gallons of GMS, about 2.5 in the row, and the other rest goes in 2x2 with the water. And then on our alfalfa, which we were putting about 2 gallons to the acre in furrow. And I had an old guy at Eastern Ontario tell me that get that alfalfa seed right above that trench of growers, right above that in furrow. So what I did is I bent my tubes so on factory the tubes go straight in between the rows of grain. Mm-hmm. So we just angled the tubes so that alfalfa is right basically on top of that furrow, or that where it cut in the grain, and the in furrow is right on below that. And then so as soon as that alfalfa seed sprouts, the growers is right there, and I'm pretty confident that there's something to that. And it does seem to really, that clean product that we use the alfalfa just seems to spike right out of that. So we've been very impressed with that. Very happy. Good. And then we come back in with foliar 2 or 3 times after that, 2 gallons per acre average, somewhere in give or take. So we're averaging about 6 to 8 gallons per acre. The first year we're putting about 8 gallons per acre. Then after that, it kind of depends how much the price and all that. Like we kind of cut back from there.
When you foliar spray, Eddie, what do you are you using water? What kind of pressure? What kind of speed? What are you doing there?
So right now we're using a flat fan nozzle, and we're right around 55 pounds of pressure. Mm-hmm. And so that's about a 5 gallon spray. So 2 gallons, 2 to 2.5, depending on the field and crop. Mm-hmm. We're going anywhere from 2 to 2.5 gallons per acre, and then we finished off with water. So
gotcha.
Yeah, that seems to work the easiest. And we're using RO water. I gotcha. Uncle that has a maple syrup, and he has RO water available from that, and it really works well. So
how long have you been doing that, Eddie?
With the RO. Third year we're using the RO regularly.
Okay. Up to that point, I mean, the water that you had, it hadn't given you any trouble. It had been a little more difficult to work with. RO is perfect, really. So,
Yeah, it seemed to be okay. We did throw vinegar or citric acid in sometimes, just,
I see.
but it was kind of right at the verge. Our water were right around 12 to 14 hardness.
I
So it
gotcha.
was kind of at the verge of. So some year, yeah, we usually did add a little bit of something just to be confident. I never really ran into any issues, but we just for double, yeah. When you're spraying, you don't want to deal with that drama. So, yeah.
One question I get asked a lot is on corn, especially for silage. Where do I feel the better investment is? Is it in furrow when you plant or when you foliar spray? And of course, we'd like to see guys do both. But if a guy was just starting out with us, in your opinion, where do you feel he would get the better quality of corn for corn silage?
Yeah, probably the foliar. I mean, if you're going the in-furrow, where I think it really benefits if you're trying to push the days in the heat units or days in what maturity days. If you're trying to push those days and get a longer day corn, then you probably should get that in-furrow in there.
Gotcha.
But if you're willing to be a bit shorter day and you want good quality, the foliar is great. And then I would do 2 applications, as soon as it's decent coverage, and then maybe 2 or 3 weeks later do it again. Corn. I find this is my personal. Yeah, from our experience, I think you need a foliar to feed that corn before long before it's tasseling, or at least once it's beyond waist height. I think you're losing some efficiency. It seems that the earlier the better, to be honest.
I gotcha. And so that's your approach, usually when you're foliar. And again, I tell guys, the price is a big deal, as far as what the commodity they're selling is, how many gallons they're going to get on there. But for us, like ourselves, we air dry all our corn, and man, we can't harvest wet corn. And we just feel, getting it in the furrow and then one foliar spray, man, we get that stuff to dry down. And that's a big deal to us.
Yeah. Yeah, and talking about drying down, we've got away with it the last 2 years here in Ontario, and air drying actually, because we got down to 19 to 20%.
Sure.
And it seems to be coming out okay. And I do think we're getting, and we're about 2,700 heat units here with our grain corn. So we're not short days for our area. We're average or a bit above average maybe. And some of the wet years, somebody shows up, I think, to this foliar, and even the calcium. I think calcium's a big factor in that. Is we got some years, it gets barely down under 30%, and yeah, we're usually right about, I know one year Dad took it into the elevator and he said nobody's bringing it under 30, and I think we were right around 29.5 or 28.5. So it does, the extreme wet conditions and the extreme dry weather is when I think we separate from the competition.
Yep, I agree with that. So what are farmers talking about up there? We're getting a push, from outside of agriculture about, environmentalism and global warming and that type of thing. Farmers are, they're hearing that pushback, but again, with commodity prices where they're at, guys are really hesitant, but they're looking at trying different things now. What's the mood in Canada? I mean, is commodity prices the big deal, and where are guys at up there?
Yeah, I think some of them are more concerned about what the dollar's going to do for, to be honest, with the dollar exchange, it's actually a good thing for the crop guys. And the price and the commodity price actually has helped us because of the dollar.
Sure. And
maybe the tariffs will be a factor in the future. I don't know, but that's as far as the environment. Yeah, I don't know. That's right now. That's kind of it's quieted down a bit. I'm not sure why.
Yeah. No, the Lake Erie thing. There was a very significant push on that, and really there's been no improvement. So again, see, this was always the basis for the growers program. Get the material where it belongs. When the plant's stressed, 2 stress points: when it germs and then when it reproduces. So we want to put it in furrow and then come back at reproduction time and foliar spray. And so you get the nutrients where it belongs when the plant needs it, and try to hold it on site rather than let it get away from us. The only thing that we're really getting subliminal push, Eddie, is on nitrogen. I think there's really a very big silent war by the establishment to try to get guys to cut back, but it's not making any impact as I see it, other than maybe the price.
Yeah. From our experience, we probably, when guys will tell us, I think you should be putting 250 pounds of urea or 200 pounds of N on, or 150 pounds N or whatever, we're probably cutting it back 30% or even a little less. And for the most part, I think we're right with everybody else in the community with yields. And yeah, it's like, it still goes back to, I think, as a dairy farmer, one of the things I really appreciate about the program, it's simple. I mean, it's putting some calcium on as much as you can justify and afford, and kind of watch your soil type and maybe soil test, and then come in with this foliar product and kind of go from there. Here's an example. When we had a real dry year back in 2016, I had a couple guys call me up and wondering, what do you think about putting this on for alfalfa weevil? It was alfalfa weevil. I wonder if I had any issues with that. And I said, well, I've never sprayed for alfalfa weevil ever on this farm. And the one guy's like, well, I got it. My field's turning yellow on me. I'm like, well, and he's like around the corner, like maybe 1.5 kilometers away. It's turning yellow on him. So we went in there, sprayed it. The one field, it was too late. I don't think it responded. The other field, it was cut 2 weeks later, so it wasn't yellow yet. There we did see a difference. And where we just did half the field, and it did turn greener. He had some weevil yet, even where we sprayed it, but it was cut back quite a bit less. The crazy thing is, I never seen it in my farm, like just even that whole summer, and yet and he had sprayed. I need to say that he did spray for weevil even before I came in. So even the stuff he sprayed, the Matador or whatever it was, didn't completely finish it. And so he sprayed both Matador and he sprayed the growers, and he still had weevil. In the one field, it was bad. And I give credit to, we've been using the calcium, and I've never sprayed Matador for a weevil on our farm.
No, the botany biologists are saying, this immune system of the plant and the connection to the biological factor in soil. There's outside of mainstream agriculture, the literature is just filled with it. And actually, some of these scientists are starting to say they think the breeding process of these companies have really hindered the ability of the plant to, use the biological life to feed itself. And as we head back in that direction, that the things you're talking about, not having to deal with insect pressure, that's going to start to improve quite dramatically. So I think we're going to see more of that as society starts deeming that they want their food raised a little bit differently.
Yeah, the simplicity of the program is, from a dairy farmer, I mean, I spend a lot of hours in the barn, and being stressed about crops is kind of the last thing I want to be worried about. And I find with this program, being on it for quite a few years, I just don't find I don't have to be so stressed about, example, do I have to call a guy to put the insecticide on? I just go do my thing, cut the alfalfa off. 2 weeks later, we foliar feed, and as long as we get some good rains, we're usually quite confident with the decent forage quality. So
simplicity, man, as you get older like me, man, that simplicity is king, boy. And see, this is something that doesn't go into the yield contest. So I think that's a very big factor also.
Yeah, I haven't paid an agronomist to come check my fields every other week anyway, so.
Very good, very good. Very good, Eddie. Hey, I appreciate it. Fine job. And so we'll send you a little heat up there. Hopefully you'll get enough to grow enough corn to feed some cows.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Take care of yourself, man.
Yeah, thank you.
This podcast has been brought to you by Growers Mineral. Please visit growersmineral.com.